Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to another episode of Shore Leave, where these two sailors are taking a chance to kick back, absorb the local color? Yes.
Color, yes.
And talk about some non-Sailor Moon topics. I'm your host, Caliban.
And I'm your co-host, Mikan Hana.
And we're here to wake up! Because I'm as tired as an 18-wheeler.
Oh, no.
Don't truckers have, like, non-illegal tricks for staying awake? I don't want anything illegal.
Lots of caffeine.
It's just caffeine?
Lots of caffeine. And energy drinks, I'm sure. Tons of energy drinks and caffeine.
I've been told by the 5-hour science labs,
of course,
that they have developed, a formula for staying awake.
Uh-huh.
And they sell it at a gas station, so it's good.
Yeah.
But I have to
go ahead.
At some point, the body just becomes insensate to caffeine, right? Like it just.
I would think so.
It just goes.
It doesn't really do anything for me.
But I don't want to do anything illegal.
No, nothing illegal. I had a friend in high school who swore by caffeine pills, and I was like, I don't.
Where is she now?
Where is he now?
Oh, even worse.
I don't know.
Upstate?
No.
Is he upstate somewhere?
No, I don't think so. But I even in like high school, I was like, I don't know if that's such a good idea.
High school caffeine pills. That's
right.
Was he like an AP?
That's intense.
An AP student or
art student?
Art student.
Yeah, an artist. Yeah.
What kind of art?
Visual art, like drawing, painting, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
It's just high school, but like, did he have something that he really?
No, I think it was like, I would procrastinate and do my projects at the last minute, but I would pull an all-nighter and then not have a caffeine pill. I think he would do something similar and then have a caffeine pill.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're an artist, you can, get stoned or something, or drop acid, or I've been told that making good art on cocaine is difficult. You can make a lot of art,
sure,
but it's not going to be good necessarily.
Right.
Just ask Bret Easton Ellis. But like caffeine pills, although not cocaine, similar. Mm-hmm. Aren't you supposed to be just driven by? Maybe this is my answer. Just supposed to be driven by the joy of what it is that you're doing.
Joy. Yeah.
Just like an artist is like, oh man, I got so many sketches to do. I'm so excited. I'm so scared.
I know.
All right. Well, to each their own.
Was it for sure? Was it caffeine pills and Saved by the Bell too? Was that what it was?
Yeah. And apocryphal. I am not a Saved by the Bell expert or a bell head.
I love Saved by the Bell.
But I read that it was going to be something else. I don't know what. But the censors were like, no, standards and practices. Like, this is a high school show. What are you doing? No.
Yeah, I know.
So like, okay, caffeine pills. How about that?
Yeah. It's so
in high school.
It's so iconic. It's
in
so
high
iconic.
School.
I know. You're right. Yep.
Was Jessie an artist?
Was she? I don't know that she was. I don't remember what her deal was.
I think Screech was really the artist.
I think so. Group. If anyone was the artist, Lisa
an
was
artiste.
Lisa was a fashion designer.
Well, that's art.
Yeah, it is. And Slater was just a jock.
Just a jock.
Sorry.
All the jocks logged off.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it like that. No, but he was the athletic one. And I think Kelly was like a cheerleader. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Zach was just the cool kid. That was his personality. He was rich. I don't remember.
I think that he was privileged.
Well, yeah. I mean, he could stop time, so clearly he's privileged that way too.
I mean, if he missed the bus,
yeah,
according to the song,
yeah,
how did he get to school? Then you just go back in and you have your driver, take you to school.
Oh my God.
What kind of dog ate the homework?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
It was a Great Dane.
Uh-huh.
Or, I don't know. What's a rich dog?
A designer breed. I don't know.
What's a rich dog?
Purebred.
Spuds MacKenzie was a rich dog.
Yeah. What is like the most expensive like purebred dog?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
I don't know anything about dogs.
I don't know enough. So.
All right. Well, then
Anyways.
maybe we shouldn't talk about it.
Okay.
Here's something I don't know anything about, but I want to.
Yes.
And that is Kamen Rider.
Yes.
And Shin Kamen Rider, the
Yeah.
third film in the Shin series, Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, Shin Kamen Rider, is coming out on Barbie Day, July 21st, on Amazon. So we'll be watching that and probably covering that on Sailor Cinema, one of our features on our Patreon. So if you want to hear us talk about Shin Kamen Rider, something we don't know anything about, I know the guy got a scarf. And
Excited.
He goes, and he jumps off a motorcycle.
Yes.
We're going to check that out. So if you want to hear us talk about that, you can find that at patreon.com/Sailor Noob in the future. Well, we got no problem staying awake this week because we have some amazing topics to talk about. First, I wanted to say welcome to the people watching on Twitch and YouTube. Thanks for joining us for this ongoing experiment. I think it's going well. We're streaming all these episodes live, and we'll be monitoring the chat throughout the show. So feel welcome to join the discussion. And if you haven't yet, take this opportunity to subscribe to us here on Twitch. Hit the heart icon, hit the bell icon so you get notified when we're live and broadcasting. And the same goes for YouTube. Give us a follow, throw us a comment there. And we'll respond to it. It helps with the engagement. And when you get a chance, check out our About page here on Twitch as well. It's got more information about us. It's got a tip button if you want to leave us a tip. And also, it's got a link to our Discord where you can join us. It's free. You can join us and talk about Sailor Moon, anime, trucker speed, whatever you can think of. We've got
caffeine pills.
We've got a conversation for that. So you ready to get started?
I am ready to get started.
All right, let's do it. Mika and I are going to talk about what's on our mind this shore leave week. Why don't you start?
Okay, so I am going to be talking about Pokemon cards and the spree of thefts across Japan, because you gotta steal them all.
So this is something else that I don't really know anything about.
No.
I missed Pokemon. I was sick that day. But I was part of a lot of the things that happened that were similar to it.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, video games, but like Magic the Gathering and
so
like I understand that they're cards and there's a game and it's a franchise. And some of those cards, big money.
Yep,
lots of yen.
I think you understand the gist of it,
Okay.
And I'm also going to be talking about something called Yami Baito, but we will get to that in a minute. It is related.
Okay. Yami Baito.
So it's not a good thing, but Pokemon cards, because you said, can be worth a lot of money these days, and some of them cost tens of thousands of dollars. Like, it's a lot. While Pokemon card theft has been happening for a while, there has been just a recent uptick in Japan over the last year. And it seems to have really increased over the last couple of months as well. In May of this year, around 600 Pokemon cards were pilfered from a store in the Kumamoto prefecture, which I believe is in Kyushu. And the cards were valued at around a total of 47,000 American dollars.
Wow.
The most valuable card, so this is one card, was worth about 600,000 yen or 4,170 US dollars for one card.
Which card?
That much I don't know. They didn't give me that information.
It's like an original Charizard or something like that?
I don't know.
These are like first edition.
Right. Like some of them are just more
black
rare.
border, first printing.
So I don't know a whole lot, but I know that sometimes they they're more valuable. Obviously this makes sense. If there aren't that many that were printed, right? Or sometimes they have the metallic cards or that look like really shiny and have, and sometimes those are like foil cards and sometimes those are more expensive too.
So here, now remember, this is, oh my God. This is just eBay. So it's, would you pay that? It's speculative. But
right.
A 1999 Pokemon base set, so the first edition, Shadowless Hollow Charizard, mint condition, and a 10. This is a 10, perfect condition.
Okay.
$295,000.
Holy cow, for one card.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
These are the kind of things that, like, here's a base edition, first blah blah blah. Also, $390,000 is the asking for this one.
Okay.
So this is the kind of thing that you see. Jake Paul has just got he got punched in the head a bunch of times, so he's got a lot more money.
Right.
And he'll go out and buy one of these.
Sure.
And then get drunk and like sit on it or something. Oh no!
Oh, I paid over $300,000.
It's a prank, bro. We put it on the couch. We knew you were drunk and put it on the couch. So. That's the area that we're in here.
Yeah, like original deck, original Pokemon.
And people will do this. Like I have a friend that owns a comic shop in town, and he's been robbed 3 times, and they don't go for anything, and they don't go for comics. They take the cards.
Yeah, that's what's happening in Japan as well. Also in May of this year, a man was arrested for stealing 2.2 million yen worth, or $15,290 of Pokemon cards in Tokyo.
Wow.
In another Pokemon card theft, a man climbed an emergency staircase and rappelled down the side of the building to the 6th floor, where he smashed the storefront window to steal Pokemon cards.
Like a stair car? Where was Joe Bluth at this?
Yeah,
at this
right. I don't know.
Time?
No, stairs on the side of the building, but they don't go to where he wanted. A fire escape, essentially. Yeah, but they don't go right past the window he wanted to go at. And apparently, after he was arrested, he told the police that he used the skills he learned in rock climbing in high school.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought he was going to say, like, Shinobi video games or something like that. Keep it all. This guy was a rock climber, so he didn't play Magic. That's a physical activity.
Right.
He wasn't a Pokemon guy.
I don't.
These were for sale, not for use.
Right. Well, I think most of them are, to sell for a higher profit.
Hazel Twilight says in the chat, the most expensive card is worth $6 million, and it is called Illustrator Korokoro Comics Promo. It's a Pikachu card.
Of course, it's a Pikachu card.
Yeah. God.
Pikachu
is
number 1. Yeah, I know.
I've got all my Magic cards somewhere.
Do you?
Maybe I've got a old-timey Nightmare card, Death Flower. Some of these Magic cards are worth a lot of money.
You should look through them and see.
Yeah, but we played with them though. They're all scraped up.
They're not mint condition.
Yeah.
But anyways, in another case, a store in Akihabara was broken into just days after it opened and had 800 cars stolen with approximate value of $182,000 US.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah. In mid-June, so of this month, Masaki Omori of Okinawa, who's 35 years old, was arrested for stealing around 1,500 Pokemon cards.
How do you get 1,500?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like a duffel bag, maybe.
Yeah. So Omori applied for what is called Yami Baito, or a dark part-time job, which is a one-time, high-risk, high-pay criminal venture at the request of someone, often made over social media.
Yami Baito. So it's just like criminal Fiverr, basically.
Yes. So Baito means...
You got a number on that?
Yeah. Baito means part-time job, so it's a dark part-time job.
And then Yami is dark?
Probably. I didn't get it. I should have looked that up, and I
didn't. Yami.
Omori's Yami Baito was to go to Akihabara in Tokyo and swipe Pokemon cards. And the person or people, it's still unclear if it was more than one person, who hired him picked out a specific shop. They targeted a specific shop. They're like, this is the one right here in Akihabara. And even though this shop sold like mobile phones, which you could, arguably sell for a decent amount of money too. Yeah. He was specifically instructed just to take the cards.
Don't get greedy.
Yeah,
just the cards.
Just the cards. And if the theft was fruitful, Omori would be paid over 1 million yen, or over $6,950. Wow. So around 7,000-ish, right, give or take.
For a night's work.
Yeah. Omori paid for his travel himself, so he paid for a flight.
If I beat you in Pokemon, you let me on that plane.
That's
come
right.
On, let's go.
I'm playing to steal more cards. Come on.
Oh no, he used the mint cards. They're not mint anymore.
Why'd you do that, Omori?
That's like in the casino thing where like they do the heist. They steal the money for the casino.
Yes.
But one of the guys that is a gambler, and so he goes and he spends all the money at the casino, and they're like, no.
Well, yeah. Well, to stay tuned. So he flew to Ibaraki on April 11th and rented a car to travel to Akihabara. So he paid for a flight and a rental car, probably hotel, whatever, on his own dime.
Okay. So far, so good.
Yeah. At about 5 a.m. on April 12th, Omori smashed through a store window and proceeded to take around 1,500 Pokemon cards worth approximately 1.15 million yen, or around $8,240. Okay. Omori then took the stolen Pokemon cards to a rendezvous in Ibaraki Park and gave them to his contact.
Okay.
He was then told to pick up his payment at a separate rendezvous on a later date.
Yeah. But
when Omori showed up at the appointed date and time, no one met him.
Right.
No money.
Right.
So, and I'm not sure what happened, but he did get, Omori obviously got arrested, but the motive for taking the Yami Baito was Omori told police after his arrest that he needed money to cover living expenses after sustaining heavy gambling losses. So it is related to losing money.
Pachinko?
With gambling. Probably.
Can you go that deep on pachinko?
Yes. I think yes, because you can, you just keep putting those balls in.
But like thousands of dollars?
Well, I don't know how much in debt he was, but he, I
gotta lay low. Knock, knock, knock. Oh no. Guys come in, big silver ball heads, like a bat.
Well, I mean, can you imagine, like, maybe you just have like, an okay job, right? And you're like, oh, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to win
I don't have
more.
to imagine not making a lot of money
right.
and then having something happen. In this case, he did it, but, it's an addiction.
Right. But, like, what if, like, you're like, well, I have X amount of money before I have to stop and, like, pay rent or whatever. And you go over that thinking you're going to make it back.
Yeah. No, I know how expendable income works.
Yeah, I
know. Fandom Casual asked in the chat, what's your favorite Pokemon? I'm an Eevee and Evolutions gal. Like I said, don't know much about Pokemon, but isn't there like a freakish, horrifying clown one?
Yes.
I'm gonna say that one.
Oh my god, Mr. Mime. I think is probably what you're talking about. He's got like weird. He looks like bald, and he's got like hair like this.
Yes.
And he's like,
yes,
yeah, Mr. Mime.
They're all
he's
cute
terrifying
animals that have been smashed together, and then there's just like, hey, what's up, everybody? Like that's my guy.
Yeah. I'm either my favorite is either Charmander, who I absolutely love, little fire guy. Cute. He's the small diminutive of Charizard. Or Psyduck, who I also love.
Psyduck's cool.
I just love that the way he says his name all over and over again. I mean, they all do that, but right. I just like the way he says it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are probably my two favorites. But Omori told police that after his arrest, he needed money to... Oh, wait, I already said that. The police are currently using Omori's smartphone to see if they can track down the person or persons who hired him to steal the cards in the first place. But they're hoping to recover the cards. I'm like, you might not be able to do that. They might already be gone. Because this job was done in April.
If they're part of their value is their being in mint condition and usually being certified by somebody. And
that's true.
You can find out on the internet, a lot of these certification places aren't necessary. There's no accreditation for it.
Yeah.
But if somebody signs off on it and says it's worth this much and it's sealed up, then good job. But it's going to have a serial number.
Yeah.
And so
that's true.
You can take it out of there to try to, file, so to speak, the serial number off, but then you lose the accreditation. And if you go to, you've got a mint condition card, in a plastic bag or something, and if you go to a place, they'll be like, wait a minute, didn't so-and-so get ripped off? So it's like anything. It's like, steal the Mona Lisa, now get rid of it.
Yeah. I guess I didn't realize they have like serial numbers on it, but if they're certified, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, the people who, or person or people who posted the Yami Baito have not been caught.
They are still at large.
They are still
at
large.
The Pokemon thieves are still at large.
That's right. You can't catch these Pokemon thieves. Yami Baito has, in all seriousness, has become a very serious issue in Japan. And it's not just Pokemon cards.
Like the third season of Westworld?
What?
They had the app where you could just go do some crimes.
Maybe.
And then they're like, I'm going to do some crimes. Oh,
that's right. That's right. I mean, yeah, but it's like, so people do advertise for them on like, it's not like a specific app just for Yami Baito, because then I think the Japanese police would have that down on lock. No, it's like...
They have a mascot.
Yeah, right.
He's got like a wrench and like a
he's wearing a hoodie.
Yeah.
And a ski mask. You can't see his face. Yeah. No. I mean, a lot of them are on Twitter or Instagram.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. So last month, 3 men dressed in black with white costume masks and armed with crowbars robbed a luxury watch store in Tokyo's upscale Ginza neighborhood in broad daylight, with onlookers capturing and recording all the heist on their phones. This is very bizarre, especially for Japan, in my opinion.
Were they disguised?
Well, they were dressed all in black and they had white masks on.
Okay. It was anonymous.
Right. The getaway van was pursued by at least 4 cop cars, and the thieves were trapped in a dead-end alley less than 2 miles away. So they ended up running on foot.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't Han.
They were not.
And the fast crew.
No, this was not a well-coordinated theft.
Okay, no, that wouldn't be Dom's crew.
Yeah, right, exactly. So less than an hour after the theft began, all 4 suspects, including the driver, were arrested. All of the suspects were between the ages of 16 and 19. Very young. Police retrieved about 70 of the 100 stolen watches. They are estimated to be worth more than $700,000.
Wow.
I don't know where the other 30 watches are.
Yeah.
But anyways...
Well, the retirement watches are covered now.
I guess.
When you pension out of the police force.
Oh, I see what you're
saying.
They're
like, oh, there's a little blood on it. But
Great.
I just have to say, in the chat, we're talking about keeping and knowing what you've got, but Hazel Twilight mentions people who are hoarding various lost episodes of Doctor Who, which is possible. Then Phantom Casual brings up that a lot of Doctor Who episodes have been found in the colonies, because nobody thought to air them, and that is true.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. I'm not going to drop any names. But long story short, we know some people who've worked on Doctor Who, and they've talked about how a lot of the literal colonies of the British Empire, because the BBC is for everybody, right?
Right.
And so they ship a lot of their programming overseas, and they go to these BBC offices in Jakarta or something like that. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with the tapes back in Greenwich Mean Time, back in the UK, is that tape is expensive. So in the old days, they would tape over old things thinking, who cares? Mm-hmm. So a lot of those early episodes are gone, but the old ones are just, a lot of them could be sitting in a warehouse somewhere in some third world country. And so, they've discovered new episodes, or old episodes, I should say, like that.
Right. But that we didn't have.
But if anybody ever finds Marco Polo.
tried so hard to watch that. It's very long. First, I've got
no, like the actual episode.
Yeah,
not the reenactment of
no,
it.
No. I know it's very long. Just watched the reenactment. So like the visual stills with the audio, it is so boring.
Well, it's just pictures.
I mean, it's not great. I enjoyed a lot of the other...
grandfather?
Yes.
Why is that white man, have a Fu Manchu mustache?
Well, that is also not great. It's also...
Anyway.
Racist portrayals.
Back to theft.
The four thieves told police that they were strangers who met for the first time doing the job.
Yeah, that's the line.
Uh-huh. So it most likely was a Yami Baito. One of the articles that I read made it sound like it was only gangs hiring folks for Yami Baito, but I don't really think you have to be like in a gang or Yakuza to post a Yami Baito ad. I mean, anybody can do it. And yeah, they're all over social media, and frequently they use things like sayings like fast cash, big money, beginners welcome. Like, it reminds me of like these schemes that like sometimes you go to a shopping mall and somebody would put like flyers on your car, like, oh, you know, part-time job for you know, the holidays, and like,
yeah, but that's just assembly for, you know, minimum wage. So like, I don't think they're gonna jump you into a gang.
No,
of
that's
watch
true.
Thieves for
that's
that.
true.
I don't know. I've never answered one of those. I'll tell you next time it happens.
All right. But it's a way for doing these ads is a way for the criminal masterminds to like facilitate the crime with a lower possibility of them themselves getting caught because they didn't do it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Compartmentalization.
Right. Yami Baito seem to particularly target teens and folks in their 20s, which I think is really unfortunate. In 2022, Tokyo's Metropolitan Police found nearly 3,500 Yami Baito listings on Twitter. This is Twitter alone.
Wow.
Which increased more than 50% since 2021. And this is in spite of efforts to eliminate the ads. So they're aware of this. They're trying to get rid of them. And Yami Baito ads have also been found on legitimate job websites.
No.
Which is like, how, you know? Once someone signs up for a Yami Baito, many find it difficult to quit. And the reason for that is, like, according to police, like, crime bosses control recruits through coercion.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Including threatening to physically harm their family members.
You're not out till I say you're out.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
In one prototypical case, police arrested 20-year-old Yuna Hatakanaka in late April, and she told police she, quote, realized it was a scam, but I had already given the crime group my photo ID and a video of my parents' home, so I felt I had no choice but to commit the crime.
What?
Yeah.
Well, this interview process is really involved.
I know. Like, why would you do that? But you're young. Maybe you like, wait, like, as you're doing it, you're like, should I do this? Don't do it.
That's our message.
Yeah, just don't.
Don't do it.
If something feels like you shouldn't do it, don't do it.
Yeah.
And the crime that her and her accomplices did is they impersonated police officers and tricked an elderly woman into giving them her ATM cards.
So they just did one.
Yeah.
Because that's the kind of thing you can get good at over time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then you start less impersonation, more social engineering. You know, you can sort of like talk them out of it. Because old people believe anything.
Right. Well, I think the idea... Well, I don't know.
I don't agree with it. I'm saying terrible things.
I know you are saying terrible things.
Being
Sorry.
facetious.
Sometimes I'm too agreeable. I think that most of the Yami Baito are just a one-time job. But I don't know if, like, maybe you get, like... I don't know if, like, maybe it's not like you sign a contract, but I don't know when you can get away from them or what have you.
This is like The Simpsons. That's Simpsons. Okay. It's probably like the Simpsons did it first. This is like the Sopranos, the other family that starts with an S.
Sure.
Because Tony's always like doing his business and his crime, and then he meets somebody, and they're like from another walk of life, but they find out that he's, gabagool.
Yes.
And they're like, hey, you think you could help? And he's like, you don't want to do this. Don't do this. And they're like, no, I know what I'm doing. And so they get involved in something, and then Tony's like little guys like Chris or somebody goes back a second time and is like, no, you did it the first time. Now you're going to do it again. And that guy's life gets totally ruined by whatever they're doing.
Well, and I could totally see that happening. It's not like necessarily a one and done. The way it was explained in the articles, it was like it's a one-time high risk, high return, supposedly.
It's never once. You pull back in.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, watch out for Yami Baito ads, and I guess I feel bad for the people selling Pokemon cards. Like, I've read that a lot of them are trying to put in more high-tech security and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
smart.
Yeah. But, that's what I have to say about that.
Well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
From the theft of Pokemon cards to the theft of honor.
Whoa!
I have a tale to tell you, a tale of the sea this week.
I'm excited.
And I want to start by saying that the Titanic is back in the public consciousness.
What? I had not heard about
the news of the loss of the Titan submersible and the 5 people on board. It's very sad. It was attempting to explore the wreck of the RMS Titanic.
Yes.
And it made me think of a connection between the sinking of the Titanic and Japan. And that specific connection is Masabumi Hosono.
Okay.
Hosono was the only Japanese survivor of the Titanic disaster in 1912. Wow. Possibly the only Japanese passenger. I don't know, but they didn't keep good records for the people in third class in steerage. So maybe there was other people, but he was, the only known survivor. And although his life was spared, his reputation in his native country would be destroyed forever.
Really?
Hosono was born and raised in Japan, and he graduated from university in 1896. And soon after graduating, he began working in the Japanese freight industry, specifically in the rapidly growing railroad industry in Japan. In 1906, he completed a Russian language course at Tokyo University, and he became a railroad director in 1908. And in 1910, he worked for the Ministry of Transport, and he was sent to Russia to research the Russian rail system there, the state rail system.
Okay.
So think, the Trans-Siberian Railway.
Sure.
Like, they really know what they're doing for the railroad thing.
Sure.
And his trip took him back to London. He came back, like, the other way around the globe.
Okay.
So he got to London and eventually to Southampton, where he boarded the Titanic on April 10th, 1912.
Sure.
He was a second-class passenger.
Okay.
First class for the classes. First class is like La-di-da, Rose and Molly Brown.
Yeah.
Second class is like tourists and people traveling for business. That's like coach.
Okay.
There is no third class on a plane unless you're in the luggage compartment. Third class, you're in the luggage compartment.
Yeah, right.
Clog dancing. That's steerage.
Right.
And Irish Moppets. And there were 2,208 passengers on the Titanic.
Yeah.
15,003 died.
Yeah.
There were about 285 second-class passengers. 118 of them survived. So less than half of them survived.
Okay.
And there were 166 women and children who died on the Titanic.
Yeah.
If you look at the demographics, first class was like 50-50.
Okay.
Men to women.
Okay.
But the other two classes, steerage and second class were like 75-25. A lot more men on the Titanic than women.
Okay.
On the fateful night of April 14th, Hosono was awoken by a steward, and he was informed about the ship hitting an iceberg.
Yeah.
When he tried to go up on deck where the lifeboats were being launched, he wasn't allowed to go because a crewman was blocking the stairwell and assumed that he was a third-class passenger. So racism. There'll be more of that.
Yeah.
He did manage to reach the boat deck by going a different way, and he steps out into the third act of Titanic. You know what happens. Lifeboats are being launched. They're shooting flares into the air. Film franchises are being launched. Right. And in a later account, Hosono wrote, quote, "All the white flares signaling emergency were being shot into the air ceaselessly, and hideous blue flashes and noises were simply terrifying. Somehow I could in no way dispel the feeling of utter dread and desolation." And because of the chaos and the priority of putting women and children on the boats first, Hosono got ready to die. In his account, he wrote, quote, "I tried to prepare myself for the last moment with no agitation, making up my mind not to leave anything disgraceful as a Japanese subject. But I still found myself looking for and waiting for any possible chance of survival."
Yeah.
And he got that chance when an officer called out that there was room for 2 more people in a lifeboat that was going off. And he writes that he saw another man jump into the boat. And though he was, quote, "deep in desolate thought that I would no more be able to see my beloved wife and children, since there was no alternative for me than to share the same destiny as the Titanic. But the example of the first man making a jump led me to take this last chance," end quote.
Wow.
On the lifeboat, Hosono was a mere 200 feet away from this gigantic ship going down.
Wow.
And he wrote that, quote, "There came back again frightful shrills and cries of those drowning in the water. Our lifeboat, too, was filled with sobbing, weeping children and women worried about the safety of their husbands and fathers. And I, too, was as much depressed and miserable as they were, not knowing what would become of myself in the long run," end quote. And as we know, the survivors were rescued the next morning by the RMS Carpathia. And he slept in the smoking room on the ship, but he avoided it a lot because the seamen on board were taunting and joking about him being Japanese.
Great.
And in his coat pockets, he discovered that he had a sheaf of stationery from the ship. Before it went down, earlier he had been writing a letter to his wife back home, and so now he had it in his pocket. So as the Carpathia sailed for New York, he used the paper to record his experiences in Japanese.
Good.
And it's the only account that we have that exists on Titanic stationery.
Interesting.
Yeah. Upon reaching New York, Hosono went to the offices of the company Mitsui, not Mitsubishi. It's 3-something, but it's Mitsui. And he asked for help getting home. To get home, he had to travel to San Francisco, so overland to San Francisco.
Yeah, okay.
And when he was there, a local paper ran a story about him, dubbing him the lucky Japanese boy. He was 41.
He was a man.
He's 41.
Boy? That's so insulting.
That's more racism.
Yes.
When he got back to Tokyo, he was interviewed by newspapers and magazines, but the public perception of him soon turned negative. And this wasn't necessarily uncommon for male survivors of the Titanic. J. Bruce Ismay was like the managing director of the White Star Line.
Okay.
Which was the line that the Titanic was under. He's actually in the movie. He's one of the characters in the movie. And he was criticized for surviving the sinking of this company's ship while like women and children were perishing on board. But Hosono faced targeted scrutiny and racism for being Japanese.
Okay.
From both the West and from the Japanese.
That's crazy.
Let's start with the West.
Yeah.
He was described as a stowaway aboard his lifeboat by Archibald Gracie, who wrote the best-selling book Titanic, A Survivor's Story. And the seaman in charge of his lifeboat, Seaman Edward Booley, told a U.S. Senate inquiry that Hosono and the other man that was on board had disguised themselves as women in order to sneak aboard, which was not true.
Wait, this man who was on this lifeboat with these other 2 men.
Yeah. It's dark. It's, and the rule generally is...
Oh, but he was fine.
We're putting women on there.
Yeah.
But, like, these 2 guys are there. They're like, well, we're going to die. Oh, the band sounds great, right?
Right.
And somebody says, we got 2 more. I mean, you want to live. He's not saying, I've got 2 more women or only 2 more kids. He's just saying, there are 2 more spots here. Who wants to get on? So...
Well, I just find it ridiculous that this person who happens to be a man himself is like saying, well, these other 2 men, not like me, were, they got on the lifeboat dishonestly.
Well, he was in charge of the boat.
Okay.
That was his job.
So that was okay. That was
he
kosher.
Survives because he's got to pilot the boat. In Japan, Hosono was subjected to mora hachibu, or ostracism. Okay. He lost his job. He was labeled a coward by the Japanese press. His actions were criticized in media. And in some apocryphal accounts, he was listed in textbooks as the example of, how not to be honorable.
Oh.
His actions were evaluated negatively by ethics professors. Now, he did later regain his job, mostly because he was just too valuable to the burgeoning rail industry in Japan.
Okay.
And he died in 1939, a disgrace. So, why
sucks.
was he so hated for his actions when he was just doing what anybody would? It all comes down to a little thing.
Honor.
called Bushido.
Oh, okay.
It's a philosophy. Yep, that's right. Stealth examination of Bushido in this story about the Titanic. Bushido is a philosophy of honorable action and heroic self-sacrifice. Bushido translates to the way of the warrior, and it is recognized as a distinctly Japanese moral code about honorable attitudes, conduct, and lifestyle that was formalized in the Edo period. In the early 17th century, we think of like Bushido as being similar to the European concept of chivalric knights.
Sure.
But it comes with more than a few caveats. Mm-hmm. First of all, Bushido, like samurais and swords, the whole shebang, is all PR.
Yeah.
Bushido as a term isn't even attested in writing until the early 16th century. Mm-hmm. And it appears in the 1616 work Koyo Gunkan, which is a military chronicle that records the exploits of the Takeda clan, which was a very well-to-do clan. They survived the whole Warring States period, and so they were like, big deal. Codes about what military men or nobility should or shouldn't do have existed long before the Edo period, and in all societies, stretching all the way back to the Kamakura period, which was in the late 12th century. But no formal code of Bushido was ever identified until the 16th century.
Okay.
So when the samurai rose to power, and we've talked about this some in scattered times on Sailor Moon, but when they rose to power in the Kamakura period, multiple codes and precepts dictated the proper behavior of soldiers and nobles.
Sure.
Across many clans and noble families. One of the earliest known usages of the term Bushido is in the influential late 16th century text, The Military Mirror of Kai, where it was used to describe unwritten rules in a complex metaphorical way that commoners could purportedly not live up to. So it's literally a list of things that knights or samurais can do that you can't.
Right.
Because you're reading this.
Right.
And it's directed at commoners. Another early text was the Koyo Gunkan that I mentioned before, which was an ukiyo-e book with artwork of samurai and simple descriptions meant for children.
Interesting.
So this is literally for children.
Okay.
It is instructional. We're telling you, we're introducing this thing to you, right? In 1642, the Kashoki, or amusing notes, was written by a samurai and included moral precepts that explained the theoretical aspects of Bushido. And it was written with kana to be accessible for commoners.
Sure.
Not warriors who have education.
Right.
This is PR.
It's interesting.
These guys.
Yeah.
They did kill all your family members. And they burned your house down.
Right.
But they're really cool, though. Look at this.
There was a reason why they did that.
It had to be that way.
And I need you to understand.
And I know it seems like the rules are for the
reason.
commoners to hear and for the samurai to obey if they feel like it. But it's really important that you read this.
It's really important that you understand how cool these guys
who
killed your family
they're really
are.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like super cool.
These rules have varied widely over the centuries. In the 10th and 11th century, there was the way of the man-at-arms, or Suwama no Michi. Also, there was the way of the bow and arrows, Kyuya no Michi.
Okay.
Because before even the widespread use of the sword, samurai had bows. They always had bows.
Sure.
After the Genpei War in 1185, that was the start of the Kamakura period. They win the Genpei War. Now the military clans, are in charge. The emperor is a figurehead. We've got a shogunate, right? The military government of samurai, called the Bakufu, takes the power away from the aristocracy. They called it the way of the bow and the horse, because the horses became very important.
Sure.
The Kyuba no Michi. These expressions, they refer to the practices which are the ancestors to Bushido, but they did not imply any relation to morality at all.
Okay.
It's how you do this, you go like this, you go like this.
Right.
No morality.
Right.
It's not included.
It's how best do samurai, no morality
yes.
included.
Their only practices focus on training for combat and the ways of samurai life in the broad sense. Sure. Now, after the social upheaval that accompanied the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate, Kamakura Buddhism, or New Buddhism, became very influential in the warrior class. And some samurai started to think that maybe they had gotten some bad karma from killing all those people.
Weird.
Maybe I'm going to see the faces of these people in my dreams. So that was that was a note. Maybe we should add some morality to this thing.
Yeah.
The Buddhist notion of impermanence, or mujo, tended to express a certain meaning to the fragility of existence as well. And also, of course, Zen Buddhism is always an influence on these things in Japan. And so the oneness between life and death was appreciated by many samurai.
Yeah, so it's like a written in the margins. May want to add some morality to this.
It's kind of like how Christianity, oh, here he goes, has only really recently, with like the rise of evangelicalism, become like a feel-good kind of feel-good kind of cult.
Feel-good.
Because like the whole karmic idea of like, you do good things, maybe God will help you out.
Sure.
That was never part of Christianity at any time until recently. So sometimes, how did those samurai act? Sometimes the lower classes need to be put in their place.
Right.
And so we got kirasute gomen, or the right to strike lower class people who dishonored a samurai.
Oh boy, okay.
There's also suijigiri, or the crossroads killing, where samurai can attack a human opponent to test a weapon or to test their skill.
Oh my god.
So they just live in Grand Theft Auto the whole time. This became rampant in the Edo period until a ban was issued, and the samurai sure loved collecting the heads of their opponents.
Yeah.
They would collect them, they would lacquer them, and set them up and display them.
They would lacquer them?
Yeah, they do the teeth. We'll talk about the teeth thing someday. The samurai applied various cruel punishments on criminals, like decapitation with disgraceful exposure of head post-death, crucifixion, death by burning with incendiaries. So it's like
wow.
Okay. And ana surushi, or hole hanging, which you can see in the Martin Scorsese movie Silence, if you want to.
Yeah.
Being ruled by soldiers and military leaders for over 700 years has an effect on a country.
Yes.
And in 1843, statesman and educator Nakamura Masanao wrote, quote, "Our nation is a nation of arms. The land to the west, China, is a nation of letters. Nations of letters value the pen. Nations of arms value the sword. That's the way it's been from the beginning. Our country and theirs are separated from one another by hundreds of miles. Our customs are completely different. The temperaments of our people are dissimilar. So how could we possibly share the same way or dough?"
Oh my god.
Nakamura was a real piece of work, and I'm going to do a thing on him in the future.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, he's a couple different things combined. But yeah, we'll talk about him later.
Isn't it like maybe I'm wrong, isn't it a Bushido saying that the pen is mightier than the sword?
That's not Bushido, I don't think.
It's not?
No.
Why did I think that?
I don't know. Look it up in your Bartlett's or something like that. Okay. So as you might be getting, the way of Bushido is kind of ill-defined, and it seems to pertain only to the warrior and to the upper classes. But the general idea that you seem to get is to be honorable and self-sacrificing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
With the Meiji Restoration and the return of imperial rule in the mid-1800s, in 1860-something, there's no more place for samurai. Right?
No.
All done. There really wasn't much place for them, you know.
Like at least 100 or so years before that.
Really at the end of the Edo period.
Yeah.
So with no more place for them, the samurai become bureaucrats. They go from military figures to bureaucrats, industrialists. Talk about your military-industrial complex. Just boom, don't even worry about that.
Yeah.
And the idea of Bushido was adapted into more of a business philosophy.
Okay.
Right? How are we going to apply this to business? It's like the 7 habits of highly armed people. And in fact, during the Taisho period, which was from 1912 to 1926, Bushido was considered the way of the merchant.
Interesting.
Yeah, great.
Capitalism.
You blew the Penske deal, Kensuke. Here's your ceremonial knife. You know what to do. Chop, chop.
Oh my God.
Bushido as a term came into common international usage with the 1899 publication of Nitobe Inzao's Bushido, the Soul of Japan, which is like the ultimate, like, airport book. No airports back then. Train station book.
Sure.
For white people to read about Japan. It was read by many Western people. In the book, Nitobe wrote, quote, "Bushido then is the code of moral principles which the samurai were required or instructed to observe. More frequently, it is a code unuttered and unwritten." Convenient. It was an organic growth of decades and centuries of military career. In order to become a samurai, this code has to be mastered. And just to show you how that was absorbed by West,
of course.
In the book Feudal and Modern Japan in 1896, Western historian and total weeb, Arthur May Knapp wrote, quote, "The samurai of 30 years ago had behind him 1,000 years of training in the law of honor, obedience, duty, and self-sacrifice. It was not needed to create or establish them. As a child, he had but to be instructed, as indeed he was from his earliest years, in the etiquette of self-immolation."
Wow.
So Japan is becoming international presence. They are looking for legitimacy on a world stage. They haven't kicked Russia's ass yet, or I guess they just did. Mm-hmm. And everyone thinks of Bushido, whether it's true or not, as being a philosophy of self-denial and self-immolation. Mm-hmm. So let's head back to Masabumi Hanso.
All right, let's do it.
Hanso was castigated for supposedly embarrassing Japan on a global stage.
You were dishonorable,
yes.
sir.
Well, it's like... Yeah. The biggest international event. Now we got a 9/11 every week. This was like huge, a 9/11 every 50 years.
Yeah, right.
It was a big thing. He was the only Japanese survivor of the Titanic.
Right.
Why is he alive?
Why isn't he dead?
Why is he not doing the Rock Lobster?
Right.
Why didn't he, as a samurai, drown with the ship?
Uh-huh.
And why didn't he make sure that every single woman and child was off the ship before he even thought about getting on a lifeboat?
How dare you, sir?
Even though the concept of women and children first was never a tenet of Bushido and had only been introduced to Japanese culture by the 1859 Western book Self-Help, written by British author Samuel Smiles, real name.
Wow.
Which was translated by Nakamura Masanao.
Wow.
For Japanese audiences.
Interesting.
That was their Chrysanthemum in the Rose.
Interesting.
They're like, oh, okay, what are they doing? Okay, cheeseburgers and women and children first. Got it. So Hosono was the victim of Japan's insecurity on a world stage. Their anxiety that they weren't Western enough. They weren't modern enough. Plus a heaping helping of fake news and just a failure of human empathy.
Yeah. No kidding. It's just really upsetting.
The really sad part is all of this was on his mind when the ship was going down.
Yeah, right.
Again, in his account, he wrote, quote, "I tried to prepare myself for the last moment with no agitation, making up my mind not to leave anything disgraceful as a Japanese subject."
As a Japanese citizen. Yeah, that's crazy.
He did what any of us would do, and he even did it arguably. He did it because he was invited into a lifeboat. And he didn't point a gun on anybody or kidnap a kid like Billy Zane.
He didn't harm anybody.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
Hosono died in his sleep at the age of 68 in 1939, so he missed the next very few exciting years in Japan.
Yeah.
And he was a source of shame for his family for years after. Aww. Even though his account to his wife, his letter, was published twice, right after his death and again in 1980.
Wow.
But the story doesn't end there. In the late 1990s, after the release of James Cameron's Titanic on 2 VHS tapes.
Yes, I remember that well.
The world was hungry for Titanic content, and the family once again released the letter to the public. And the public was much more forgiving and empathetic this time around, maybe because of the passage of time, maybe due to the harrowing and graphic depiction of the Titanic's sinking, as seen in the film, and the passengers' last moments, and the terror and tragedy that we know was inflicted upon these people.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Hiromi Hosono. Mm-hmm. He's 75 years old right now. He's considered to be one of the most influential musicians in Japanese pop music history. He's credited with shaping the sound of Japanese pop for decades, as well as pop outside of Japan. He inspired the genres of city pop and Shibuya Kei, and he's the leader of the Yellow Magic Orchestra.
Okay.
And he's Masabumi's grandson.
I knew it. That's so cool.
With the release of Hosono's account in 1997 and the public's positive reaction, Hiromi declared that he was, quote, "extremely relieved. Honor has been restored to the Hosonos."
Oh.
Honor for a man who was a loving husband and father, a man who helped Japan develop its superlative rail system, who gave us he was one of the people that gave us city pop, and a man who, even as his life flashed before his eyes, had his country's reputation on his mind.
Yeah.
He got his honor back, whether or not he had ever really lost it.
Oh, that's great.
And now you know the rest of the story.
Aww. I feel like you've just read me a really great story. That had a beginning, middle, and end. That was great.
The more you know, yeah.
So I probably shouldn't share this right now, but apparently in Japan, recently, 2 days ago, Fuji TV got into hot water because they aired the movie Titanic back to back.
They did it twice?
They did it twice in a row.
They're like, we got 6 hours of programming here.
Yeah.
Hell.
I don't know. On June
Heaven's
24th.
Gate or, no, Titanic. We'll do Titanic.
Or wait, on June 24th and, yeah. Wait a minute. Sorry.
Get your facts straight.
I know. It was set to air not once but twice. I guess it hasn't aired. I'm sorry. But people were not happy about it, and told them that was not a good idea and you shouldn't be doing it and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I read another thing recently that has kind of to do with honor that in Japan that I thought was kind of interesting, but I mean it's very different. But there was a young man, he's like in his 20s, that was involved with a hit and run, and like he hit somebody who was on like a motorcycle or whatever, and he fled the scene. And then his dad showed up like an hour later and he said, I did it.
Wow.
And people were like,
that's the best birthday present ever.
I know. And like,
I'll come visit you in county.
I know. And people like, you get the whole range, like what a great dad. And then like he's old enough to know better. He needs to own up to his own mistakes. That sort of thing. So.
Well, that's Bushido at work, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah, this Titanic thing is really weird. I mean, I haven't really been paying that much attention to it, but it's caused people to look back over a lot of different media and like pull up any footage they have. And there's a thing where, of course, a lot of this is centers around James Cameron, but they found footage of September 11th.
I heard about
where
this.
James Cameron was, of course, he was in a submarine.
I know.
And
visiting the Titanic.
Yeah, and so he's literally coming up out of the water, and Bill Paxton is there for some reason, just because he's a time traveler and he knew that would be a good detail for this story in the future.
Of course.
But Cameron's getting out of the sub, and Bill Paxton is saying, like, Bill Paxton, it's the worst terrorist attack there's ever been, Jim. It's like it's like a scene from a movie. Like, what's going on? So anyway, it's horrible.
Oh, it is horrible.
But it's wonderful that you've decided to join us
yes.
On the show. And thank you for honoring us with your presence this week. Thanks to the patrons for your support. We really couldn't do this show without you. I want to remind everybody on Patreon or know that we have lots more Sailor Noob content available on Patreon at patreon.com/Sailor Noob. If you want to support the show by becoming a patron, you can go there, patreon.com/Sailor Noob. And sign up to be a patron today. Also, if you don't want to join a club, that's fine. Maybe we don't want you as a member. I don't know. But you can go to Ko-fi. That's ko-fi.com/Just Enough Trope. Drop a little something in the tip jar. Say, hey, you're doing a good job. We don't just talk about Pokemon cards and the Titanic here on Twitch. We also do other things like play video games. Every 12 p.m. weekdays, I do the Laser Lunch Hour here and play video games for your enjoyment. We talk about nerd stuff. Today we were talking about God knows what. I can't even remember now.
How tall some celebrities are.
How tall some celebrities are. Why ducks like bread.
Yes.
All kinds of good stuff.
Why fish like bread.
So join us here at twitch.tv/Just Enough Trope, 12 p.m. weekdays. Also Thursdays at 8 p.m. Central. We talk about the latest episode of whatever Star Trek show is out right now. Right now it's Strange New Worlds. Pretty good series. And we're talking about that Thursdays, 8 p.m. Central. All here on twitch.tv, Just Enough Trope. We're good, right?
Well, I do want to talk about next week.
Oh, yeah.
So next episode, we're talking about episode number 148. Yume no Kagami, Amazon Saigo no Suteiji. In Japanese. Wanted to make sure I got that pronunciation right, and I tripped myself up. Suteiji. So Mirrors of Dreams, the Amazon's Last Stage, the English translation, and the English title, Eternal Dreams.
Huh.
So, yeah, that's next week. So, I don't know. Any thoughts about that, Cal?
I think that it seems like it's going to be over soon, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. So, but yeah, that's our show for this week. Thanks again for joining us. And
you're wrong.
What?
You're wrong.
I'm wrong?
You said 149. It's 148.
I meant I said 148, didn't I?
Shadow of Evil, The Trio's Last Chance. Or the English title, A True Reflection.
What?
Episode 148.
Did I have that wrong?
Yes.
Oh. I'm sorry.
So episode 148. Keiu Aku no Kage. Oitsumareta Torio. Right?
Sure.
Yes, that's what it is. Anyway, that's what it is. So we'll see you next week for that. That's it for us for this shore leave. And join us when we make up for another episode next week of Sailor Noob.